Welcome to part 2 of making a sci-fi abstract animation in Blender. If you haven't already seen part 1 of the tutorial where we do the modeling and the animation, you can go check it out on my channel. But this is going to be part 2 where we're going to be doing the lighting, the materials, and we're going to be rendering it out as a final animation that you can show your friends and be proud of. So as always, these blend files are available on my Patreon, all in the description below. And let's get started with part 2. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to go over to our render settings, and we're going to make sure the render engine is set to Eevee. We will be working with Eevee, but come down here and make sure to enable ambient occlusion, screen space reflections. Just keep in mind if you do work with refractive materials to enable refraction, which we won't be doing, but also bloom. So make sure to enable bloom. So once you've done that, we can start, in fact, we can start adding in our lights pretty much. So let's go Shift A. Let's add in a simple area light. And let's go over to our strength light settings here, and let's make the strength 45. And with that active, we're going to go G, Z, and move it above, and then S to scale it up a bit, like that. We're then going to go to our front view, Shift D to duplicate that light, rotate it in towards the orb here, and rotate it forward a bit. So just a duplication like that. And then we're going to make the strength 130 on this light. We're then also going to come to the side, Shift D, move it over here and rotate it in towards the orb. And then we're going to go Shift D, make one more duplication and let that reflect from the front. So now if we go into a camera view and we hit Z and we go rendered, we should see something like this, but also make sure to come to your world settings and grab the color here in the world and make it black all the way like that. We're also just going to grab this light here and we're going to go Shift D, move it to the back and just rotate it in just so we have a little bit of light coming from the back, but not too much, just something like that. So we should be seeing this, but just come here to your light settings and let's make the strength from that 90. So you don't want to be quite as strong. Okay, so now we have our lights set up. We can come and select the orb and let's go over to our shading workspace. Make sure you're in your camera view, hit Z, go rendered. And with the orb active, we're going to click new to make a new material for the orb. And let's call it copper. It's going to be a copperish kind of material. And let's go and give it a texture. So we're going to go Shift A down here, search, and let's type in noise. Let's make a noise texture and let's plug the color into the base color here. Now make sure you go to your preferences, and in your add-ons you can also just come click on that, search up here in the search bar for node, and then make sure your node wrangler is enabled. Once you have the node wrangler enabled, you can select the texture coordinate and hit Control T or Command T, and it'll add in these coordinate nodes here for you, primarily a texture coordinate and a mapping node. Right? So now it's automatically plugged in, and let's just take the object and make sure to plug that into the vector of the mapping. Okay, that's really cool. Now let's come here to the scale on the noise, and let's make that 13. So anything from 13 to 17 should be okay for this. And let's bump the detail up to 16. And let's take the roughness and let's make that 0.9. And the distortion we're going to make 0.3. Now you're not seeing much over here, but if we go Shift A and we search, we can type in color, and we're going to grab a color ramp node, put it on top of the cable here, and now we have these value sliders we can use to intensify the contrast of this noise texture. So let's drag the black value up quite a bit past the middle point and then drag the white value down closer to that. So just something like this. You can see we have this nice marbled kind of texture here. We're going to move the principled node up a little bit more. And now we're going to go Shift A, search, and let's type in mix. Let's get a mix RGB node and put it on top of the cable here. Just make sure the color is the factor. And now that black and white value is going to tell two primary colors how to mix. So let's select color 1. Color 1 is going to be kind of a reddish brown. So I'm going to make it a reddish brown. Bring the value down a bit, and then we're going to select the second color and let's make that a little bit more orangey, a little bit more toasty, but make sure to also bring the value down on that just a little bit. So I know you're not seeing much at the moment, but if you come here to the metallic value and you click on it and type in 1 to give it a fully metallic value, you're going to now see this, which looks pretty cool, but it's lacking some roughness. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this color ramp, so Shift D to duplicate it. Plug in the color into that ramp of the noise texture, and then take that color from that new ramp and plug it into the roughness of the principled BSDF. And now you can mess around with the sliders here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the black value down just a little bit. It's quite sensitive. Bring the white in more and just mess around with that till you get the kind of right, proper looking reflectivity. So just something like that looks pretty cool. You can mess around with these colors up here if you wish, but just something like this is kind of like a nice coppery looking material, but it's nice. I really just like the way this comes out. Add a HDRI on here and it'll look even better. So now we have that done. What we're going to do is we're going to select all of these nodes. We're going to right click and we're going to go copy. Then we're going to select the ground plane and we're going to go new. Let's call it ground. And let's select these nodes and hit X to delete them. Right click and then paste in these nodes. What we're going to do now is we're going to come to the metallic slider and make it 0. And then we're going to come to our colors here and we're going to make them much darker and desaturate them. So I'm going to desaturate them, come to the bottom one, desaturate it, and also make it a lot darker. Just make sure that the bottom one has a little bit more reddish saturation to it, but the top one is a lot more desaturated and a little bit lighter on the value. So this is kind of the result it should give you. This kind of like really cool looking rocky surface. And at the moment it's still not quite popping. So let's go Shift A and add some rim lights. Let's add in a point light to do that rim light. And let's go G, move it up. And we're gonna place these rim lights behind the orb. Go into our camera view. And then we're gonna come to our light settings and let's increase the strength to 50 and then increase the radius. And let's give them a little bit of warmish yellowness. Just slightly saturated, and then G, move them behind her a bit more. And now you can duplicate these lights, put them behind the orb there, and that's just gonna make it really pop out from the background. Okay, select the one at the bottom here, and the one towards the bottom, you can give that a little bit more saturation on the orange. And the reason that we're gonna do that is because we're gonna select this little band that goes around, go new, and let's just go to our materials here, come to the surface, and let's make that an emission, because that's an emissive material. Let's make the strength 12. Click on the color, and let's make that nice and orangey kind of yellow. And there you have it. So that is pretty much how that looks. And if you want to render this out as a final animation, let's go to our layout. Make sure just to save this as well. Once you've saved it, you can go over to output. Go down to your output folder, and I'm going to select my desktop. Then you can come here to the file format and make it FFmpeg. If you're worried about the computer crashing, you can make it an MPNG and then render out those sequence of PNGs and then compile it together as a video format in something like After Effects or even Blender. But just because it's a short little animation, I'm just going to make it FFmpeg. I'm going to come to my encoding, and the container type is just going to be a simple MP4. I'm going to once again make sure to save before I do any sort of rendering. And now if I go render and I go render animation, it should render this out as the animation you saw earlier in this video. So this is pretty much the final result. I really hope you guys enjoyed this little Blender tutorial. And if you haven't seen part 1, like I've said, check my channel out and make something cool with it, show people what you've made, and check out some of my other content. I really appreciate the views, the likes, and the subscriptions, and all of those of you who have gotten involved with Patreon, where I will be putting this blend file. That's also really appreciated. So stay safe, guys, and I'll see you next time.